I'm not anti-science by any stretch, but I'm anti-science confidence, because I hate when scientists speak so absolutely, about something, and then tomorrow they're like, oh, you're wrong because we've proven ourselves wrong, and it's like, well, but yesterday you had us all convinced you were right, and anybody that questioned you was an asshole and a conspiracy theorist or just a Luddite, right? But in reality, the unknowns should never be assumed, right? And I mean, it's like the same what you just mentioned about the genes reminds me how people talk about the brain, right? Like how many times have I heard? I'm sure you've heard it yourself that 90% of the brain is unused, that we only use 10% of our brain, but a bunch of horse shit. We just don't understand what the other 90% of the brain's doing. I'm sure why would the most crucial part of our body, the most delicate and impressive part of our body, only be firing on 10%? Like that's like somebody trying to tell me my heart's only 10%, or only being used, and like,
exactly.
Give me a fucking break.
Exactly. I mean, it's how dare you use reason? How dare you apply reason to your thinking? I mean, it's just it's the idea that we have some kind of empiricism that tells us exactly what's happening. There are one or two areas of science where things seem very weird that we've actually managed to confirm. We've done experiments and we've confirmed them, and that's kind of infected the whole of science with this idea that when science makes a declaration, it's actually real, it's actually true, we know it for a fact. Like the two areas I'm thinking about would be areas of interest for me are the quantum world and the cosmological world. So you look at quantum theory and it's weird and it doesn't make any intuitive sense, but we've measured it and that's the way it is, and it's weird, but we just got to live with it. So that seems like we predicted, for example, the Higgs boson on the basis of our understanding of the way particles are arranged, the standard model of particle theory or whatever it's called. And we predicted the Higgs boson, went looking for it, and lo and behold, there it was, exactly where we thought it would be. Fan-fucking-tastic. So, and then Einstein makes these ridiculous predictions about relativity. That mass creates gravity, and that gravity bends time and bends light. And you think, well, that's completely non-intuitive and has all kinds of implications to do with black holes and all that kind of stuff. But we take two clocks and we send one in a spaceship round the world and we bring it back, and yes, it's got a different time on it. And we see light now bending around stars and bending around galaxies and stuff like that. So that non-intuitive nonsense turns out to be exactly real. So most people know about those things now. So when scientists say other things, if you applied reason to those two examples, you would come to the wrong conclusion. You would conclude that it can't possibly be like that. So using reason to figure out, the functioning of the brain or COVID or whatever it is, these dogmatists will attack you for using reason because they can point to these examples where your intuitive reason doesn't actually work. So we've got a huge problem. It's not really a problem with science so much as it is a problem with the media and the way that the media promotes people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who make absolute statements that this is absolutely the way it is, And
until tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, until tomorrow. Yeah, well, exactly. But he's absolutely sure that there definitely was a Big Bang, and it definitely did sort of happen that way, and we know because of all the evidence, and he'll trot out all the evidence. And then, people like me say, well, if that's true, then what about this, and what about that, and what about that? And, these are exceptions. Well, there's a few wrinkles. No, there's not a few wrinkles. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. The observations don't hold true. And when you get your James Webb Space Telescope and you look back to the supposedly early part of the universe, you find structures that you shouldn't expect. So how do you explain that one then? And I've noticed a deafening silence from people like deGrasse Tyson and other people. I've seen one or two sort of gatekeepers kind of sort of saying it doesn't mean the Big Bang's wrong. It doesn't. They've said that, but there's a growing sort of sense of there's a pregnant pause right now because all the observation, there's a lot of observations in, and people are kind of trying to find a way to say what has to be said without ruining their careers. And one of the things that you might be interested in with regard to the void, I don't know if you know about the interstellar voids or the intergalactic voids, But it turns out that the voids might be very, very important. It might be the voids that are these empty places where nothing's supposed to be happening. It might turn out that they are the answer to everything. And my big question is, why are there voids? Why in a universe that's governed by gravity? Why are there voids? There shouldn't be voids. There shouldn't be any big structures round about voids. And the latest theory that I've heard is that the voids are like bubbles. They're not passive. They have an outward pressure the same way that a bubble does. You know, it acts against the matter that's around it, which fits in with my thinking precisely. But yeah, science. I don't have any problem with science. I do have a problem with the way that science is portrayed in the media, and then of course you've got the concomitant follow on from that, which is policymakers. You know, the political side of it. So you've got science says this might be the case. Media says, oh, the shit's going down. And then policymakers have to react to that. But the scientist isn't saying, panic, 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 you know?
Oh, exactly. And that's why I love observation and further observation more as we like collectively, you know, let information in rather than making assumptions about the things behind the curtain, right? Because that's where I think a lot of the science that upsets me is when they talk about things as they know, when they know they shouldn't. Like they've been taught time and time again that without more observation and more proof, you're just making assumptions, right? And not to bring this back to your ceiling there, but I felt a little vindicated because we haven't talked about your ceiling other than you sent me a picture, and when we canceled 2 weeks ago for our meeting, I looked at that picture you sent me, and I went like, I looked at it and I thought, that looks like either a plumbing problem or he put his foot through the ceiling. But it looked like both.
It was both.
Right? So I've been scratching my head going like, how'd this hole happen? I couldn't wait to hear the answer, right? Because
I didn't realize I had your rapt attention. I would have told you otherwise. Yeah.
Well, it's okay. Well, I figured it better to save it for this kind of conversation, right? But and it was nice because I'm as if we're looking at, like, picturing myself as, you know, your photographs are like my James Webb telescope, and you know. And your hole in the ceiling is like my distant constellation. And I'm going like, that looks like two problems.
Yeah.
Like how could, you're right. So I thought maybe like your roof was leaking and then something fell and then actually punctured through the ceiling. Because I knew that wasn't just water damage, but there looked like there was some water damage.
Right.
Right. So the fact that when you told me the story without me having to prod too much about you putting your toe through it, I was like, that's exactly what I thought had happened. Like it looked to me. Yeah. Right. And I'm not a drywall expert and I'm not a plumber. You know, but I have had a ceiling fall down due to water, you know, and whatnot. And when my ceiling fell down, it was in a basement, and it was the day of I was hosting a bachelor party at my house, and we've been out all day doing stuff. And we come home, and one of the beds one was supposed to sleep on's got a bunch of water and paint and gypsum and drywall all over it, and it was kind of embarrassing, you know.
Yeah, but, yeah. It's horrible, you know, when something happens to your house. You know, it's your home, it's your shell, it's viscerally part of you. You know, and it's so. My wife was really upset. She was really upset about it because all of her stuff is in that room. You know, all the stuff she's created, and you know, exerted so much effort to make us in that room, and she just for a moment or two saw it all disappearing in front of her. But she, like I say, she was very, very lucky. She was very lucky indeed. In fact, we had another leak, a similar sort of thing, and it was in the bedroom. And we came back from holiday to discover it, and it had only just happened. So we got lucky then as well. So fingers crossed. We're quite lucky when it comes to that kind of thing. You know, we haven't had any major sort of disasters where we've lost stuff, but gee whiz, it kind of just brings it home. You know, like I say, you don't have to go looking for trouble. It just finds you. Just sit still. It'll find you. The wall will collapse, or you know, somebody will break in, or something will fucking happen.